Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Vulnerable Woman podcast. Thank you so much for choosing to join us today. Just a quick reminder, if you enjoy our content, please go to our Instagram page, follow us. Also on YouTube, please like, subscribe, hit the little bell at the bottom so that you can be reminded when a new episode is out. I'm so excited that I get to have a new guest on today that is a very dear friend of mine. So Tara and I met, I don't even know how many years ago now. It was back in 2016, 2017. Our daughters used to dance together, and people used to tell us that our daughters looked like they were siblings. And yet her and I had never met one another. And one day we were waiting on them because if your daughter does any kind of competitive sport, you know how it is. You're sitting up there waiting a lot. And you bring a book or you go to a restaurant and hang out or whatever. Well, I think we were just sitting there. You were waiting on Alex. I was waiting on Gabrielle.
Yeah, no, the coolest part about it too was that we were both there. That was both of our very first time at the studio. Our girls were trying out to see what level of ballet class they were going to be in.
That's right.
So they happened to be in the same little tryout level, and we just sit there and talking. And you know, me, I was not the approachable type. And, you know, self-secure mechanism. And you came up to me and said something. You're like, oh, my name's Tara. I'm like, huh, that's funny. My name's Tara too.
Right. And
then we actually lived like 2 minutes from each other at the same,
And then we started carpooling. When we realized we lived so close together, we started carpooling our kids because the drive was 30 minutes there and 30 minutes back. So we would kind of take turns taking kids because you get tired of driving that far. And then our friendship just kind of grew from there. But one thing that I really appreciate about our friendship is just the judgment-free zone that we try to give one another, the accountability that we give one another. It's not always great to hear when we have to go that route, like sharing, you know, both of us have told each other some hard things. I know you've told me hard things. I've told you hard things, you know, and at first your defenses kind of go up, but in the end, you know that person really truly loves and cares about you and wants the best for you. And another thing I've always appreciated about our friendship is that even when things can get hard sometimes with our friendship, we're very lucky, which I feel like isn't very often, even though Mike likes to make a bigger deal about it than what it is. He'll always say if we haven't talked in a while, he wants to know if we're beefing. Yes. And we're like, no, we're not beefing. We've been busy. But just being able to always know that, you know, if I haven't talked to you in a while or whatever, I can always pick up with you right where I left off. I can talk to you like I talked to you 5 minutes ago. And it's just that easy friendship. It's never, for me at least, it's never difficult. And I know I can always count on you no matter what. And so those are the type of friendships that I encourage you to surround yourself with. And if you're in a friendship that's not like that and it's more difficult and you always feel like you're walking on eggshells, I would just caution you a little bit. And I will say you've always challenged me too on spiritual growth, because I remember when you came here to Sci Life, I was somewhere else and I kept telling her I just didn't feel like I was being challenged, and I just kind of would go in and go home, you know, and she was always like pushing me, and not necessarily to come here. I mean, yes, you wanted me to come here, but you were always challenging me to find a way to take my relationship to the next level when I was going through that. And then that's kind of when, you know, we opened our eyes a little bit and realized that we needed a place that drove us to a deeper relationship with Christ. So, and thank you for that.
Thank you for allowing me to speak into that. And that was a journey. I was thinking about that, and that was at least 3 years going through that, I remember. Mm-hmm. And it's just amazing. I just feel grateful to be able to be here in it and be alongside you, because you have been such a good, dear friend to me. You're like my sister. Yeah. You are literally my sister. Yeah. So even though we have the same name. So.
Yeah. I think we've been asked before if we were sisters. And it's a very odd question considering we do have the same name. I'm just like, no. Like that, why would our moms name us the exact same name?
Yeah.
That'd be super confusing. So starting getting into your your background, tell us a little bit about you growing up.
So just kind of basic to start off with. My parents had me when they were in high school. So they were 16 whenever I was born. And I mean, my families, both sides, my mom and my dad's, it's literally a tale of two cities. My mom's side of the family, they're very poor, like farmer stuff. I grew up in Oklahoma too, so that was part of it. But they were very poor. All of, I mean, just that lineage, that whole line was very poor. And then my dad, on his side, they were more upper middle class. Like my grandparents, my grandmother was stay-at-home mom, and my grandfather was a chemist, and he provided, for the whole family. And they had 3 boys. So the early part of my life, I stayed with my mom and her family. They raised me through the early parts of my life. And so just kind of in that atmosphere again, didn't have the parents together and things like that growing up, just beginning in a broken home. And then I didn't have any contact with my dad's side of the family, I guess, for the first 2 years, which obviously I don't know any of that. So that had no effect on my feelings or my story toward them.
Right.
But my mom being very young, 16, and things like that, she's still a kid. So what is she really going to do for, a child? They did the best that they could with what they had.
She was a kid herself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She was a kid herself and things like that. I know, like early on, we lived with my grandmother for the most part. So she has 2 siblings also. My mom has a brother and a sister. So I know the first 2-3 years of my life, we all lived together. My grandmother, in an apartment. I think it was like the low rent housing things and stuff like that. I think part of through my mom's own brokenness, she got in many relationships. She's looking for love in the wrong places. And so there was the inconsistency of just different men, kind of in and out of our lives and things like that. And later on, I came to realize, I mean, very much like in my 40s, that, no, I take that back. I was probably 16 years old whenever I had the realization of it, but I think the acceptance of it was later in my 40s, that I had actually been molested by one of her boyfriends. And that was something that I've pushed so deep back that I thought I just made it up. So I just kept it to myself, which I don't know how to explain that, but that's what it, is. But seeing that, she just so craved love, that dependency. And of course, sometimes, the kids become the casualties of that, unfortunately. But so that was a hard thing for me to accept here just recently, because I always wanted to be strong and things like that. So to me, I'm like, oh, if I do this and then I'm this victim, and I'm like, I don't want to be a victim, and I don't want to be seen like that. I don't want people, I don't want people to look at me like, oh, I'm so, so sorry for you.
You don't want people to feel bad for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
I just didn't want that. I'm like, no, I see me past it. That's not me. I'm still what you've come to know. But I'm sorry, I digressed, didn't I? But my mother did get married. Well, she moved in with a boyfriend, and they had the common law marriage. So that was the stablest part of my life when I was around 5. And 4 or 5, yeah. And they stayed together for 6 years and then split up. So that time, I felt like I see now, was a time that God gave me of stability during an early part of my life that I really, really needed it, because it was during the elementary years. So we were in one spot. We didn't move, So that's part of the story too, was we moved a lot. We don't have our own home, so we're living in low rent housings, and whatever things come up, sometimes, different apartment comes available, you go there, whatever. So this time between 4 and 10, to 11-ish, that was a very stable time, and it was through my whole elementary years, which super, super grateful. Well, after they split up, moved back in with my grandmother, and she just I think she just broke. There's something in her that broke, really kind of like lost herself and stuff, and started really self-medicating with alcohol and then later on drugs. The good thing was my grandmother was there, and so she was a very stable figure in my life. But there was a lot of in and out. You know, with my mom, she would disappear for days at a time and things like that. You know, fast forward a little bit, whenever I was about 12, we got a rental house of our own. So I have a sister at this point in time. I have a sister from, you know, when my mother and that common law marriage of hers. So it was me, my mom, and my sister alone in this house when my mom's ways hadn't changed. So actually they got worse. Was going out. Like I said, I was 12. My sister was 7. And she was like out partying and would be gone for days at a time. And thankfully at that time, we were both in school, so I could get us on the bus to go to school together.
So you were basically being left alone, and you were kind of being mom to her while your mom was gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I very vividly remember one time, like one of the very first times, because I was 12, between 12 and 13. I was like 7th middle school. I was... I had called my aunt because that was the first time that my mom hadn't come home when we were by ourselves. Like I said before, all the other times she disappeared, we were with my grandmother, so my grandma was there. So there was a parental figure, and, you know, we were taken care of and things like that. Well, I literally didn't know what to do. I'm like, I'm 12 years old, you know. I'm like, I don't know what to do. They're not here. She's not here. She didn't come home last night. And they came and picked me up. And me and my sister up, and then as we were driving off, somebody pulls up to drop my mom off. This is a very memory of that she, you know, kind of stuck with me, that I worked through. And I'm like, oh, you know, mom's home, so we're good now. You know, we don't have to go. And my uncle's like, nope, we're leaving. And they were very upset, which rightly so. She came there to pick us up and stuff, and, you know, they got in an argument and things like that. And I remember on the drive back home just being shamed by my mom and just manipulated about, you know, oh, how much it hurt her, and I can't do that. You know, we could be taken away. Do you want to be separated from us and stuff like that? So then I knew that was a very pivotal time. Like, okay, when these things happen, I can't say anything.
Because so it was almost like she made you feel guilty for calling your aunt, but then later it made you fear calling anybody when you were left alone. So you just kind of took the burden on yourself of taking care of your sister and just being mom at a young age out of fear.
Yeah. And then part of that, and I guess that's just maybe the role I took on. So in my personality is I'm the peacemaker, you know, so I wanted to keep the peace with everybody. I don't want anybody upset. I'm always that was basically my role in many type of relationships that I see now, that I just continue to kind of like fall in with that. But so one of the things which they obviously don't do now, but when I was younger, which is I'm old now, they would actually, during the summertime, there'd be buses that would go through the neighborhoods. And this happened mostly in poorer neighborhoods, obviously, but buses would go through the neighborhoods to pick up the kids to take them to church during the day and stuff like that. Yeah. So that's what we would do. Like, I mean, my mom's at work, it's summer, we're at the house by ourselves. What else we gotta do? So we'd get on the bus
to go to church.
And we'd go to church. So
yeah, I remember that too. I remember my dad, he drove the bus, to go pick up kids in kind of like Mississippi, there's really no inner city, but you know, just kind of in the poorer parts of the neighborhood to pick up kids, to bring them to church for VBS or whatever event they were having. Yeah. And I remember there would just be loads of kids that would come, and they loved it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it's a place where you felt community, you know, and you felt safe.
Yeah. There was a safety, there was a fun, you know, to it. But obviously the biggest picture that was, you know, there's the introduction to Jesus. And being in those environments like that, where it is, you know, because a lot of, like I said, our parents weren't there. I mean,
Right.
they're the latchkey and they're working, so it's not a disparaging thing because this was working and
When it was a
you do what you
different,
do.
it was also a very
Sure.
different time then too,
Oh,
right?
absolutely,
Leaving kids
yeah.
at home. So not to say that it was okay, but just like that at that age, a lot of times you did get left home if your mom and dad were at work or whatever. So that was a little bit more normal, I think, then than it is now.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yep. So wasn't a big deal. Get on the bus, go to VBS, whatever. Yeah, go to the church. Hey, here comes the church bus. We're going to church for
Yeah.
a couple hours of the day. So that would be like the biggest introduction. And we did that too. Like we lived out in the country too, and they did the same thing. So I was exposed to the church and Jesus at a young age, but never really understood. Plus I was young and things like that. And that just wasn't a priority, obviously, and things like that for me at that time. But I was exposed, which was great. And like I said, now looking back, I can see those times where this is where God protected me in these certain times and things like that. But yeah, so we only lived there for about a year because, like I said, my mom, she had drug and alcohol problems and stuff like that. She popped positive on a random drug test, lost her job. So we couldn't, stay there anymore. And it was low rent housing. And I guess one of the things too, you talk about like the inner city. So Ponca is little. If there was an inner city, this would be the inner city. We were actually the only white family that lived in this neighborhood. So, so that would, has different implications of itself about acceptance and being accepted. So I had to earn my way to be accepted there. And then I loved it, and I had friends and things like that. And then here we go again, a year later, we can't live there anymore. And we're
starting over.
We're starting over and we're moving in with other relatives and stuff like that. Well, I was 13. She was pregnant, became pregnant again with another sister. And we were just like living with relatives and things like that. Went into low rent housing and stuff like that. Same type of the perpetual leaving and things like that, even after my sister was born. Her name's Haley. So after Haley was born, so I was about 14. And now looking back on it, it didn't seem odd at the time, but I actually missed school. I went to the hospital with my mom while she gave birth. So I was there with my mom while she was giving birth to my youngest sister. And then I'm thinking now, I'm like, I don't think I would take my 14-year-old into, delivery room with me. But
my 13-year-old would be like, Mom, no.
Yeah.
I guess she would not be interested.
Yeah. So I was there whenever Haley was born. And she would, so my mom could, go through phases, was good for a while. And then again started just, like I said, just the ups and downs, start hanging, like you see with a teenager, it was like that. She was stuck as a teenager, hanging out with the wrong crowd, staying out at night, drinking. And now I have a 8-9-year-old sister and a newborn. And it was okay with Kayla because we could get on the bus together and go. Well, I'm like, now I can't even go to school sometimes because I have to take care of a newborn. Right. And then it became to the point like Haley was so attached to me, and I'd carry her. I mean, even with my mom and stuff like that. But I'd get the dirty looks. I looked like that young teenage mom, and things like that. So those were shame things also that I'm like, just having people looking at me, and this isn't me. This isn't not me.
But you really had no other choice. And if any, when you said that, the thing that I think of is and I think we've all done it. When you're walking around somewhere, the grocery store or church or wherever you are, shopping at the mall, and you see someone young with a child or whatever, that just tells you don't be quick to judge. You don't know that situation of that person, and you don't know what they're going through at home. It's kind of like that you were getting the looks like it was your child, but what they didn't know is that was your sibling that you had no choice but to step up and take care of at a young age. So it teaches me too, to be careful when I look at someone and I perceive a certain situation, to make sure that I'm considering them, and I don't know their situation. I don't know what they're going through. I don't know what's on the other side for their home life. And so if anything, even now, just talking to you, more than anything, it just wants me to give them love and grace. Yeah. Because I can't imagine how, and you saying what you felt from them and wanting to say to them, this isn't mine, this isn't mine. Like I didn't have a choice, and you could feel the judgment just through their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's hard. And you still remember that feeling to this day.
Yeah.
It affects you.
And it does. And that's the thing and so that was like the shield. So I would want to do better. So I'm a doer, for the things I want to do better. I want to be better. So again, another thing, how God just totally protected me was, I'm very book smart. So that was a thing. School came super, super easy to me. Like I said, on my mom's side of the family, I was actually the first person to graduate. From high school. Yeah, I was the first person that graduated from high school from that side of the family. Obviously, on the other side, like I said, my grandfather was a chemist, so went to college and things like that. But that was a big thing, and that is one good thing that my mom did really just hammer into me, just kind of pounded in, is like, school. You have to go to school. It's so important. You have to do. It became unhealthy for me because that's kind of where I put my identity into. But even like during this time, school, I was an AB student at this time, and I'm like, that is something, I'm like, this is not going by the wayside.
Even with the days that you missed by taking care of your newborn sibling.
Yep. And like later on, I remember like during the summers and the summer like that, if my aunt and stuff like that could take my sister, I had no transportation. I would have to walk to go to practice. So I did athletics, I did basketball and like cheerleading and dance team and stuff like that. And I would walk to get there because my mom wasn't there.
Right.
And part of it, again, a lot of it was working, but then there were the times too, obviously, when she would just, that was just normal. She disappeared for 2 or 3 days at a time. And
you got used to it.
Just got used to it. And that's how, that was life. That's what it was. But I always knew feeling that shame from all of those things of the on that side of the family, already being judged obviously for being poor or living, in, poor section and stuff like that. Probably anything I got was mostly hand-me-down or scholarship-wise. Like when I was on cheerleading and stuff like that, it was scholarship and things like that. So even though I earned it in a sense, and I did earn it, so because of my grades and things like that, it was still a handout,
Right.
And so just walking in that, and I felt like, just like almost my whole family shame, I just felt like it was on me.
You carried that burden on your shoulders.
I did. I just carried the whole family's, junk,
right,
for lack of a better term,
And you wanted to do better from it.
And I wanted to do better, so I thought I had to perform better and just be better. I had to do these things, very, very performance-based, but, very strong-willed. Like I said, nope, gonna do this, gonna walk. So I did all this. I stayed in the house until I was about 15. And then that's when it came to like a boiling point where I was moving up into high school, and I'm like, I can't put these two lives together. I can't do this. I literally had to make a decision. This might make me cry. I had to make a decision. I have to do something for myself. I'm going to be selfish, and do it. And in that, I'm going to be leaving. So if I decide that I can't stay in this house anymore, I'm leaving my sisters in this situation. Yeah. So I did carry that. I went to many relatives. What I was kind of surprised looking back now, like I went to my grandmother who, we lived with growing up and stuff like that, and she wouldn't take me because just didn't want the strife. which it's her daughter. Okay, I get that. I went to my aunt, who is her sister, also uncle, the ones that, picked me up that one time. And they were very weary to do it too. And I get it.
It wasn't that. Sounds like they weren't weary because of you. They were more weary about maybe like with your mother.
Yes.
And, maybe them being accused of you're trying to take my kid away or something along those lines, I would guess.
Yeah, because there was some repercussion, because through that there was so much like manipulation. Like if she get mad at them, then we wouldn't see, like we were like the tool used to punish, family for something like that. They would get into an argument and then we wouldn't see them for a while because, well, you're not going to be around my kids, stuff like that. So I get that. And I actually then went to my grandparents on my dad's side. So I have no relationship with my dad. I mean, he pops in every once in a while. He didn't live in the city that I did. I mean, he did for, I don't know, I think until I was like 6 or 7. And then he had moved away. But he was never involved. He was an offhand's dad. Might get a birthday card or something like that, every once in a while. And I did have a good relationship with my grandparents. It was still kind of, if you have a distant relative that you see like a couple times a year, a few times a year. So yeah, they love you and stuff like that, but there's just not that closeness. So that's kind of how ours is, because whenever I was little, they were here, or they were in the town we lived in. Well, then my grandfather got transferred, so they lived in Austin for several years, and they had just moved back to Ponca. So another thing that just came to my mind, just that closeness thing. They had, like I said, lived for several years in Austin, and I would go up there during the summers. I stay a week or so during the summer with them. They'd fly me down there and stuff like that, which was really cool. But whenever they moved back, I remember calling, and I'm like, hey, I'm like, hey, Grandpa. And he's like, I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number. Oh. And I was just crushed.
After you had spent the week with him.
Yeah. So no, sorry, I made that confusing. So when they moved back to Ponca,
gotcha.
I just called to be like, hey, you're back in town and things like that. So, and so then that was crushing, because like, oh yeah, now it's like a thing. It almost felt like another type of separation of unacceptance, unwantedness, not seen. And I do remember that. So when I was kind of struggling through this, like, I've got to get out of here. I can't do this anymore. My next stop, I'm like, I'm going to ask them. And that was super hard for me, because again, coming off that background, which was probably 2 or 3 years before that, whenever I did ask to live with them, but still I had that in the back of my head. I'm like, they don't know you. You really think these people are going to, take you in? Yeah. And because I'd go visit, a couple times a month and stuff like that. And then finally I just broke down. I'm like, I was at my breaking point, and I'm like, I can't go back there. Can I please live with you all? And kind of, explain some of the situation. And they said yes. They talked to my mom. Not pretty, lots of screaming and yelling, and I'm sure, which they totally shielded me from, which was new to me also, because I was in there for all, hearing it all, the fights and things like that.
You knew all the things, and things that even someone probably your age, that we as parents now try to keep our kids from. You were being, put right in it. Now, how old were you when you called your grandparents? You said 15.
15.
Okay, so 15 years old, and that's, in my mind, I think how brave that is. But at the same time, it's like you said, so scary, because you're thinking they didn't even recognize my voice when I call on the telephone. They're not going to want me to live in their home. Mm-hmm. You kind of just kept feeling rejection after rejection after rejection, and you probably were thinking, is it even worth it to call? Because they're just going to tell me no anyway. In your mind. Because our mind and Satan, he likes to come in and feed us all those things that, what to think about ourselves. They're not going to want you. You're not good enough. But you didn't know that then, but knowing it now, that was a lie from the pit of hell.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. And so, you know, even now I was saying here, I'm like, wow, just, I can't believe that I did that at 15. I mean,
That's
to
why I
me,
said it's
I would,
so brave.
yeah, I would say
for
that,
15.
yeah, like
I can
anybody
barely
else.
get my kids to go up and say hello to
I
somebody.
know.
Like, you know, to make a new friend, I'm always like, hey, there's someone new. Like, go introduce yourself. And they're like, what do I say?
Yeah.
I'm like, how about hello? My name is, you know.
Yeah, well,
you know?
my 18-year-old went to a birthday party this weekend, and I had to walk her up to the line at Texas Typhoon. But I'm like, Samantha, I can't walk with you through the line. You're going to have to go in by yourself. So,
But you at 15 were picking up the phone or going to relatives saying, hey, I know I've got to get out of this situation. Can you help me? I mean, what bravery you had. And just kind of what a desperation you probably must have felt at 15. And probably thinking, you know, I shouldn't have to be doing this.
you know, that didn't never really cross my mind that I shouldn't.
Really?
It just seemed, it was normal.